Okay, so, oh, excuse me, got a frog. I've got a few minutes to do a bit more on my vlog, and I thought today what I'd do is go back to where we started and carry on that story. Obviously, the documentary only showed a very small snapshot of what happened in that time, and there were lots of things that were not in the documentary for, you know, various reasons. So I just want to start there really, and start talking a bit about what happened when we came home. So obviously, you know, we'd all piled into the car. It was a huge. My mum was very upset because she felt that she'd not only lost Natalie, she'd also lost her grandchildren. But because my mum has very, you know, severe health problems, and she's, you know, her health has deteriorated massively since all this happened. She had a fall at the beginning of the year, and she's only recently moved back into her own place, but she's moved up to be near us because it was just too much at the old house, and yeah, it's been really tough for her, and understandably. So she's only just back on her feet again, and it just wouldn't have been appropriate. She couldn't have managed all of the children, so that was it was tough that day leaving, because she was very upset. And probably the first time actually that I think myself and Kerry, we've talked about this since, it's the first time that any of us actually thought that we were leaving and we may not see somebody again. I mean, I personally had not thought when I've left, you know, when I've been down to visit my mum's house, when I've left, thought, well, this could be the last time I see one of my family members. It just had not entered my head. But that realisation when we were leaving, that actually, you know, God, what if something happens to somebody else? You know, I might not see them again. So that was quite emotional as well. It was, yeah. My big brothers are not necessarily ones for showing their feelings, but that day I can remember that, you know, like everybody was just hugging each other and everyone was very upset, because I think, you know, I think for all of us it was the same feeling. But excuse me. Anyway, we travelled back home, and it was just a whirlwind. The next couple of weeks were just a whirlwind, trying to get the children back into school, get rooms organised, sort them out so they had toys and clothes, because they had nothing. They had absolutely nothing. And I just want to say that actually it was because of the generosity of friends and strangers, the people donated to a Just Giving page, that actually we were able to get the things that they needed, like beds and clothes and some toys, and that my sister was able to move to a bigger house, because at the time she was living in a 2-bedroom cottage, which was absolutely fine for her and her boys, but suddenly, you know, when you've got 3 boys, the house was just too small. So she was able to move to a bigger property, and it was the help that we were given from strangers that allowed us to do that. And I feel like I would be being a bit of a hypocrite if I didn't say something around my concerns of the way that things are picked up and how slow the response can be in times of a crisis. You know, for me, there needs to be some support for families in that situation. We were fortunate and we were able to find the money to do those things. Not everybody is in that position. Not everybody has a job and or you know, a partner that is working, and that, you know, you can find, you know, £1,600 to move house in a month, or, you know, we were very lucky, you know, very lucky. So a massive thank you to everybody that donated and gave us donations of clothes and toys, because actually without that we would really have struggled. But I suppose then it comes back to actually who should be helping in that situation, because we didn't do anything wrong, the children didn't do anything wrong, but ultimately the children are the ones that are paying the price for what's happened. And, you know, myself and my sister, in the longer term, it's the impact on us is huge, and, you know, there should be support out there for families. There definitely needs to be more support, and things need to be clearer. Now, I was fortunate in that I'd fostered for 10 years, so I understand the fostering system. my husband, who's an incredibly intelligent guy, was completely bamboozled by it all, and he found it really, really difficult when he was coming home and there were another 4 or 5 people had been in the house for whatever reason, and he's like, well, who is that? What is their job? Who, you know, what do they do? What is their role? And you know, when you start talking about things like SGOs, care orders, you know, lack reviews, PEPs, you know, all these things that, yes, I understood because I'd done the job, but not everybody has. And when you're already dealing with what we were dealing with, and you're, quite frankly, your head's a shed, to then have all this added on top, it's incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard. And so and it is something that I will be bringing up when I go to the Home Office in the new year, is just around what support families are given, and that support should be consistent. I was fortunate, I understood the system and I stuck to my guns, and I have fought for what I believe is to be correct. Not everybody is in the same position as us, and I just briefly want to kind of go off tangent a bit here, but I've spoken to quite a few people with children that they're caring for various reasons. It's not necessarily domestic abuse, but because of a sudden loss of a family member. And there are so many families out there that are not getting the support that they need. You know, grandparents that have used their life savings to bring up their grandchildren. You know, people that were due to retire and have got their nest egg and it's gone because they're having to suddenly bring up their grandchildren. In our situation, you know, we've gone from a family of 4 to a family of 6. But my husband's job hasn't suddenly changed so that he's suddenly able to accommodate another 2 children. And I don't believe that money should be a dirty word, because ultimately it costs money to bring up children. And families should not bear the brunt when somebody else's actions have resulted in you doing the right thing and stepping up and saying, no, we will take responsibility for these children. There should be some help, and at the moment it's not consistent. So that's something else that I will be talking about when I go to the Home Office, because I do think the government needs to have a safety net in place for families like ours. And you know, when I say ours, I'm not necessarily talking just about domestic abuse. I'm talking about any family that is left in trauma for whatever reason. It could be a suicide, a car accident, you know, a murder. I mean, it could be, you know, 101 different reasons, a sudden, you know, an illness, but families should not be left on their own. So that is something that I will be looking to talk to them about when I go to the Home Office. But in terms of social services, you know, Milton Keynes have been brilliant with us. And you know, I can't praise them highly enough as a service. They've really supported us as a family. I think where there was a problem was when other local authorities were involved. For myself, my experience was absolutely fine. I had a social worker from my local authority come to do a quick visit to make sure everything was okay, and it was absolutely fine. She was a very nice social worker. She was very supportive and, you know, obviously got the situation. For Kerry, it was very different. She was made to feel like she'd done something wrong. My sister was made to feel as though she had done something very wrong, and that's just not acceptable. You know, we were all trying to deal with a very traumatic situation, and the social worker that came in to visit her, again, it was nothing to do with the local authority that we're working with, but it was the local authority where she lives. The social worker had gone in and pulled her beds back, was quite rude to her, and made her feel like it was an interrogation, and that was not the purpose of it, and actually shouldn't have happened. So I just think there's lessons to be learnt there, and it is something that I am hoping to address and hoping to get involved with, supporting social workers in understanding when they're going into a situation like ours, that yes, they have a job to do, and yes, there are procedures and things they have to follow, but actually having a bit of compassion and and maybe just taking a breath and thinking about what they're walking into might actually make a massive difference for the families. So yeah, and in terms of schools, obviously all the professionals say, you know, the best thing to do in this situation is to get children back into a routine, and that's what we did. It was about getting them back to school as quickly as possible and just trying to keep things as normal as you possibly can in this situation. I mean, you can't even imagine, just even use the word normal after this is just mad. But so and I can't praise the schools highly enough. Up here in Yorkshire, they were amazing. They yeah, education were brilliant, and the schools were absolutely fantastic. And the proof is in the pudding. You know, the fact that the children are doing so well in education because they've had the right support at the right time, it says it all. And you know, and the fact that it wasn't just Natalie's children that were supported, it was our own children. You know, my eldest daughter Lauren is 17. She was just going through her GCSEs when it all happened, and it could so easily have gone horribly wrong for her, but the school made sure she had the support she needed, and that you know, she's walked away with fantastic GCSE results. That, you know, obviously some of that is just down to her, you know, sheer determination, and the fact that she's quite like me in you know, she understood that this has happened, but we have to still try to, you know, get on and do the best we can. So yeah, it just, you know, for me that says it all. Is the children have all done incredibly well, but it's because they've had the right support at the right time, the right interventions, and you're not having to fight for stuff. We didn't have to fight, you know, we weren't arguing with anybody or trying to get things moving. It was just there, and it was provided. So so yeah, so it was a busy few weeks, getting them back into school, getting them back into routines, reorganising houses, moving Kerry, all of that stuff went on. And then you kind of I mean, obviously at that stage, or certainly for the first couple of weeks, we had no idea where Natalie was at that stage. And what we'd sort of agreed was that we'd tried to meet up every weekend with the children so that they were having regular contact, and that's what we were doing. And so on Sunday the 22nd of May, we were having Sunday lunch, and myself and Kerry were busy in the kitchen just cooking the dinner, and I checked my phone and I realised I had a missed call from one of our flows, Nikki and Natalie, who were amazing. And Kerry checked her phone at the same time, and she went, "Oh, I've got a missed call too." And I just remember we were stood in the orangery, and we just looked at each other and sort of said in unison, "They found her." And we just knew. I mean, there was no voicemails or anything. It was just, we just knew. So phoned them back, and they confirmed that Natalie had been found, or they believed Natalie had been found. Obviously, we had to wait for formal confirmation, but and it's not a phone call I'll ever forget. We were told that she'd been found in a kind of, it was just like a ditch really, that she was naked, that she'd just been left, and that was quite tough. I mean, we did learn afterwards that, and we did actually go to where she was found much later. We didn't go initially, but much later down the line we did. But we were told that actually where she was found was between two houses. They were, you know, quite a distance apart, but there was sort of a meadow in between, and a road, and then like a mound, and then a ditch the other side, and it was sort of wooded, and then this meadow. And the guy that owned the meadow had, as part of his house, he obviously had his formal garden, and then this bit of grassland at the side, and he'd gone out to kind of do a boundary check and things, and his dogs had run off and wouldn't come back. So obviously he kind of got nearer to where they found her and smelt something and thought it was just a deer, you know, or a badger or some large animal that had died, and obviously got closer and saw my sister's hand, yeah, and obviously then dialed the police. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what that, you know, that poor man felt finding something like that, and I'm sure it's not something he'll forget in a hurry, or the family. And one of the reasons that we didn't go initially is just out of respect for them, because it was their property, and obviously they've got the police and everybody, and I think there was quite a lot of media interest and things at the time, so we just didn't want to you know, just didn't want to intrude. So we did go much later, and I'll be honest, when we did go, I had more questions than I did answers, which was odd. I didn't think I'd feel like that. I thought it would give me some closure, but it didn't. I just sort of looked at where they'd found her and thought, why here? You know, he's driven around hundreds of miles of empty farmland, or, you know, of very big areas of farmland and woodland, and this is a really quite built-up area, and it was fairly inevitable that she was found. And I think for me is that I just don't believe he ever intended to leave her there. And it's just the fact that she was reported missing so quickly, that he didn't have the opportunity to go back and move her to somewhere that we probably never would have found her. And I think he'll have a hard job to convince me otherwise. I just think it just didn't make sense. So yeah, it was odd. It didn't really give me the closure that I was expecting, but you know, that's just the way it is. But we took some flowers, and yeah, I suppose it's just kind of closed the door for us. I wouldn't go back, because I don't see that there's any point, because, you know, we've got Natalie back now, and she's at, you know, been laid to rest at a local church, and if I wanted to visit her, I would go there. I don't feel I have any need to go back to where she was found. So yeah, so that Sunday was really difficult. It was a really emotional day, but it was odd because I can remember there was this really odd sense of relief that it was, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, that certainty that she was gone was obviously really difficult, but this odd sense of relief that we had closure, and that we could give her a funeral, and, you know, we could do all the things that you're supposed to do when somebody dies, and be able to grieve, and so that was very odd, very odd, and yeah, it was really difficult. I'll leave it there for today, and then I'll come back and do some more when I get time. Okay.